It was indeed the 24th of June 2025 that Daniel, now Lord Hannan, and still paid by outfits like the Daily Mail and the Daily Telegraph for his sparkling insights, described what he thought Brexit would look like today as a consequence of voting to leave the European Union back in 2016. So we're grateful still to BBC's Newsnight, who put together a kind of audio-visual package on the 23rd of May 2016, which opened with these immortal words.
Outside the EU, Britain is the region's foremost knowledge-based economy. We lead the world in biotech, services, law, education, the audiovisual sector.
And we will return to that point shortly, but I want first to talk you through the article that it was based upon, which was published by an outfit called Reaction Life back in the day. It's the 20th... Oh, and before I do that, Dmitry Grozoubinski is with us. Dmitry, I hope you weren't busy. Happy Daniel Hannan Day.
Thank you. And let me tell you, listening to your previous segment, it is unbelievably infuriating that 5 years from now, we still have to talk about Daniel Hannan. And for so many years, his project meant that government was paralyzed dealing with his dreams and not dealing with the kind of issues that your callers were calling it about.
You're referring to the idea that he kind of thought that the unachievable was achievable, and his own ignorance, stubbornness and ignorance, and he wasn't alone, was the reason why nobody could get a half-decent deal over the line even after the debacle of the referendum result.
I would say more than that. I think there's an original sin here, which is if you present a referendum to the people, and you would know I bang on about this endlessly in the book, but it's fundamentally about presenting them with a choice. And what people like Daniel Hannan did was they took away from the British public the ability to make that choice in an informed way. The choice was you can take some economic damage in order to regain more decision-making power for Parliament. And that is a legitimate choice with arguments on both sides. And what he said was actually, no, it's not a choice at all. You can regain those powers for Parliament and everything will work out better economically, socially, and personally. And I think that is an egregious thing to do to a voting public.
Well, unlike me, you're still angry about it, which I think is healthy. Dmitry, as he's just alluded to, is the founder of Explain Trade and the author of the book Why Politicians Lie About Trade and what you need to know about it. And it's that understanding of trading matters that underpins the frustration that he articulates. I'll start reading and you stop me, all right? Have you got a bell or anything like that?
I'll just start crying, James. When you hear sobbing,
you could just go ding, ding, ding.
Sure.
Ready? It's the 24th of June 2025 and Britain is marking its annual Independence Day celebration. As the fireworks stream through the summer sky, still not quite dark, we wonder why it took us so long to leave. The years that followed the 2016 referendum didn't just reinvigorate our economy, our democracy and our liberty, they improved relations with our neighbours.
I mean, ding, 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 the underlying assumption there, I don't want to go through this point by point because we'll be here all week.
This is true.
But the underlying assumption behind a lot of this was that the paralysis in British politics, the big issues facing Britain, how to reform, how to balance ease of doing business versus integration, how to balance social safety net with a sort of quick capital turnaround, and all of these things, that all of these would just magically go away, that the whole country would magically come together the second you left the European Union. It was an attempt to pin every single really complex choice facing Britain and all of the things that make British politics slow and painful and contentious as any vibrant democracy is, and just go, well, actually, it's because we're in the European Union, and the second we leave, it'll all be hunky-dory, both domestically and overseas.
I would just remind you, lest anyone think he's exaggerating, of what Michael, of the missing word round that we're currently playing in the background. Blank, the stupidest thing any country has ever done, says Michael Bloomberg. I'll carry on. New industries, Dmitry, from 3D printing to driverless cars, have sprung up around the country. Older industries, too, have revived as energy prices have fallen back to global levels. Steel, cement, paper, plastics and ceramics producers have become competitive again.
Well, let me ask any sort of steel producers in the UK, or indeed any energy consumers, do you feel like energy prices have fallen? Do you feel super competitive today? Is it possible that membership of the European Union wasn't the only thing holding back British entrepreneurship and competitiveness? A massively complex productivity challenge lasting decades, and tracing it back to, we have to say, years of underinvestment and policy laziness by successive governments, many of them of the sort that put Daniel Hannan in the House of Lords.
Well, there we are. Just don't ding for a while, because you're right, we are going to run out of time. The last thing most EU leaders... I mean, the levels of ignorance are actually spectacular. You could probably see them from space. The last thing most EU leaders wanted, once the shock had worn off, was a protracted argument with the United Kingdom, which, on the day it left, became their single biggest market. Terms were agreed easily enough. Britain withdrew from the EU's political structures and institutions, but kept its tariff-free arrangements in place. The rights of EU nationals living in the UK were confirmed, and various reciprocal deals on healthcare and the like remained. For the sake of administrative convenience, Brexit took effect formally on the 1st of July 2019 to coincide with the mandates of a new European Parliament and Commission. It's so much ignorance, it's hard to know where to start. Here you go, your turn. In many areas, whether because of economies of scale or because rules were largely set at global level, the UK and EU continued to adopt the same technical standards, but from 2019, Britain could begin to disapply those regulations where the cost of compliance outweighed any benefits.
Well, I mean, this is the underlying thing here the whole time, wasn't it? It was a competitive of like, we know what happens when you leave the European Union. There is a hard border between you and your customers.
But you knew that, I knew that. Why didn't he know that? How could he not know that?
But he did. But the trick he is playing here is, and he's not the only one who did this, a lot of people did this, was you weigh that against always unspecified reforms. Like there was a magical bucket of reforms that are easy and politically painless and no-brainers that you could just, as soon as you're out of the European Union, you could just wave a magic wand, make a bunch of reforms, and suddenly Hoxton is the Silicon Valley of the world, or whatever nonsense he wrote.
During the first 12 months after the vote, Britain confirmed with this will probably be the last thing we have time for with you, the various countries that have trade deals with the EU, that the same deals would continue. It also used that time to agree much more liberal terms with those states which had run up against EU protectionism, including India, China and Australia. These new treaties came into effect shortly after independence. Britain, like the EFTA countries, now combines global free trade with full participation in EU markets.
Yeah, so virtually none of that is true. They did manage to roll over many of their trade deals, which is great. Sometimes not all the way, but they did a really good job of that. But they don't have global free trade, certainly, because unlike Daniel Hannan, the United Kingdom is not a libertarian country and kept most of its tariffs in place. It took years to do a free trade deal with Australia and India. None of which are complete free trade, and all of which were hard to do. And it does not have access to the European Union.
One of which famously prompted gales of laughter on Australian television when they started picking over the detail of what had actually been delivered after a sort of final minute capitulation upon capitulation from Boris Johnson, who of course later put Daniel Hannan, who we are celebrating today, in the House of Lords. Last one, unsurprisingly, several other European countries have opted to copy Britain's deal with the EU, based as it is upon a common market rather than a common government. Some of these countries were drawn from EFTA. Norway, Switzerland and Iceland are all bringing their arrangements into line with ours. Some came from further afield, Serbia, Turkey, Ukraine, and some followed us out of the EU, Denmark, Ireland and the Netherlands.
Yeah, so Brexit was so painful to watch that previously Eurosceptic parties all over Europe abandoned Euroscepticism in case anyone said that they were like Brexit. So, I mean, quite the opposite happened, precisely because it was exactly as painful as experts said it was going to be.
Well, you can see that. I can see that. The people living in the European Union, where support for membership has just reached the highest it has ever been, can see that. But I presume that Daniel Hannan and his mates still can't. But nonetheless, Dmitry Grozoubinski, trade expert and author of Why Politicians Lie About Trade and What You Need to Know About It. Happy Daniel Hannan Day. Go on, say it.
Happy Daniel Hannan Day and many happy returns.
It's 12:02.